Saints, welcome back to another episode of Prophetic Updates with Lighthouse Beams Ministry. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe, click the notification bell so that you'll stay updated. Share with your friends so that they can be blessed by these presentations as well. Let's go to our next segment. We talk about the Adventist Church and how it was actually dealing with the COVID situation. Now that the world is actually apologized for all those mandates that they have imposed upon the people, the people who actually forced the mandate, they apologize. Will the church apologize? Well, that is up to them. But I want to just make a case here. Two questions. Question number one, is the Pestilence 19 mandate something of religious liberty? Does it have anything to do with religious liberty? That is my first question. We're going to see what the Adventist Church actually stands on, what they believe to be. Question number two, again, the same issue of Pestilence 19 jab. Is it supposed to be an individual choice or a collective choice? Now, where does the Adventist Church stands? We're talking here about a serious issue that caused the loss of lives of many people, an emergency. Now, the question here, another question that we'll go into before we go into just the side question, was the Pestilence 19 virus an emergency? Of course, it was an emergency. In Testimonies for the Church, Volume 3, page 280, paragraph 3 says, if God harbors one sin above another, of which his people are guilty, it is doing nothing in the case of an emergency. Indifference and neutrality in a religious crisis is regarded of God as a grievous crime and equal to the very worst type of hostility against God. What does God hate above all other crimes? It is being neutral in the case of an emergency. It is doing nothing in the case of an emergency. Now, let me ask you again, is this case the Pestilence 19 pandemic that came and passed? Was it an emergency? Was it an emergency? Yes. If there is an emergency, should the church actually come up with something and stand on some steady, solid grounds? Of course. We shouldn't remain neutral in an emergency. But guess what? The General Conference was the stage of the standing of the General Conference during that time. I do not have time to show you everything because we have a lot of things to cover. But I'm going to show you a video that during the 2021 June summit, actually the General Conference session, they actually brought up the issue. But guess what? The president went and told them, this is not a serious issue. This is not a serious issue. We are leaving it to the general audience to decide for yourself. This is what he actually said. I'm going to put it up on the screen.
My dear delegates and friends on site and online, in reference to the issue that has been brought up by a delegate regarding vaccinations, since it has been seconded, it is fair enough for us to vote on that. But I want to strongly urge in asking this body not to put that issue on the agenda for the reasons that have already been enunciated by our chair. First of all, it is not a constitution and bylaws item. Secondly, it is not a church manual item. Thirdly, it is not a fundamental belief item. Now, there may be individuals who will disagree with me and others, saying it is my fundamental right to be able to make a choice as to whether or not I wish to receive the vaccination or not. And the General Conference has very much stood on the position that everyone should make their own decision. The General Conference has made a statement in regards to vaccinations, but the General Conference has not mandated that people take the vaccination. It has given people a choice.
Pause. Again, my question still remains. Question number one, is it a religious matter, religious issue, something to do with religious freedom? Question number one. Question number two, is it a decision that should be done collectively or individually? Is it an individual choice? Here, they're actually saying that it is actually an individual matter. Individual matter. If it is an individual matter, then why didn't they actually supported the decision of individuals? Think about it. Now let's continue.
So rather than for us to become embroiled in something which is not an agenda item for a general conference, it is an administrative item. It has been dealt with. Some people don't like the way it has been dealt with, and that is their right. But rather than for us to become embroiled in something that is not an item for a general conference session discussion, we respectfully, kindly, and very much in a determined manner ask that you, the delegates, vote no on placing this item as an agenda item.
That was actually the voting. They were voting to remove it. No, actually, they did not include that item during an emergency. Remember, during an emergency, they specifically said the chairman actually tried to remove that thing totally, but there was a lot of requests from the audience, from the congregation, that they should actually include that as an agenda. So before they actually, because of that, they wanted to allow it, but before they allow it, Mr. President Ted Wilson went up to actually appeal to the audience that were sitting there to not to vote, put that on the agenda to talk about. And you know what? The chairman, I was listening to it, he actually said, we have a lot of things to talk about and we do not have time for this issue. My goodness, this was one of the serious issue that dealt with the lives of the people at that very moment. It was an emergency. But guess what? Adventist Church decided to remain neutral. If they want to say that it is an individual matter, then they would have supported the individual decision, freedom of conscience. That is what they would have supported, which they didn't. If they believe that it was not a religious liberty issue, it had nothing to do with religious liberty, then they got to be out of their mind. Seriously, they got to be out of their mind, because Adventist, the rhythm of the gospel is medical missionary, is health reform. And the rhythm of the gospel is not the doctrine. Is not the doctrine. Really. If you want to make it another doctrine and edit it. But if not, we could include it in the belief number 22, which talk about Christian behavior, where we do not take narcotics into our body. We do not take harmful substances like drugs, like smoking, all other harmful stuff, including there is the reason why Ellen White in a lot of cases says we shouldn't take drug medications, and people do not. It's sometimes difficult because the mainstream church, Adventist church now, has already received drugs. This is just the next step towards it. But again, coming to the issue, is it a religious matter, religious liberty matter? If we cannot protect this, guess what is coming? Sunday law is coming. Sunday law is coming, friends. Now let's go into the crux of the matter. We're going to talk a lot about, I could say a lot on this topic alone, but they should leave it to the individuals. That is what he said. They produced, this is Ted Wilson on his Facebook page. He said, many have wondered about the church state on the new Pestilence 19 shot. Here is a very important article addressing the concerns and offering counsel for the General Conference, from the General Conference Health Ministries Department. So, and we're going to an article, but someone actually asked the question, can someone tell us what is in that article, please, on his Facebook page? And he said, the church stance is that it is left up to the individual. Pause there and let's go back to the video then Ted Wilson talk about. When are we supposed to give the platform to talk about this issue? If we are going to be, are we just going to let it slip by? Aren't we supposed to talk about some real-time science, comparing it, seeing it from both sides? That was not done, but they just said we leave it to the congregation. Guess what? It caused chaos in a lot of places. leave it to the audience. Well, now let's look at what the Religious Liberty and Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Director of the General Conference had to say in these regards.
The following reflection actually addresses a critical question. Is the COVID-19 vaccine stance a religious liberty issue, a personal philosophical choice for fear of negative outcomes, or a deep misunderstanding of the scope of religious freedom itself? The Seventh-day Adventist Church, the Department of Health, and the Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Department have supported and made it clear that the health crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic is a public health issue, not one of religious liberty.
Is not a religious liberty issue. Really? Is it not? I'll come to that later. So you're actually saying that it's not a religious liberty matter.
Some request letters of exemption, while being sensitive, of course, to the predicament and hardship of those who choose not to be vaccinated. The church has chosen not to issue exemption letters based on the prudence of not impinging upon the realm of state authority.
Pause. So what they're actually saying in essence here is that in these regards, in this concept, when it comes to health, the state can make decision on the health of an individual. Do you see that? That's actually what, in the case of a health emergency, the state can actually infringe upon the rights of individual. But what surprises me is that they are talking from both sides of their mouth. One, they are saying that individuals should make the choices. But when it comes to giving out exemptions, no, let me just pause here to say something. The PARL, the Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Director, actually made the statement that it is not a religious liberty issue. When they say that it's not a religious liberty issue, there is actually a statement in itself that supports or give harm to the government, to enforce or infringe upon the rights of individuals. And then it contradicts with the religious liberty issue again. So the statement that Ted Wilson said during the General Conference session is made null and void again. Now, look at the continuation of what Ganon Diop said.
Personal conviction is not corporate responsibility, but corporate responsibility in the form of an official church position, such as, for example, the absolute right to observe the Sabbath, not to work on the Sabbath, not to take exams or to go to school on the Sabbath, is supported by international law and can benefit from accommodations and exemptions. This is not the case for the choice not to be vaccinated. No international law has been promulgated against vaccination.
Coming back to our question before we summarize this segment here. Number one, is mandatory jab of the people something to do with religious matter? Is it a religious liberty issue? Of course it is. Again, Ganon Diop, you are out of your mind. It is something to do. We as Adventists, above all other denominations, there are some other denominations, but we are one of those that fight for temperance. We are the pioneers of the temperance movement that talks about keeping the body healthy. This is what our pioneers stood for. They fought for religious liberty. And when we talk about the health has everything to do with our doctrine, Ted Wilson. Everything to do with our body temple, Ganon Diop. If you disregard it as a religious liberty matter, you are truly out of your mind. I'm sorry to say this, but this is the truth as God lives. You are out of your mind. Point number two, is it an individual decision or collective decision? Here he actually got up and said, the personal conviction is not corporate responsibility. But then he said, but corporate conviction in the form of an official church position, such as the absolute right to observe the Sabbath, is something that we can actually support. Pause there. Let me ask you guys, did they provide the platform so that we could talk about this and make it a corporate decision? When this was brought before the right place to talk about the issue, they said no. So whose conviction, whose corporate conviction are we talking about? Are you talking about those from the world? Well, thinking about it again, this was not corporate conviction. It was the conviction of a few fringe minority that infringed thereupon the congregation, the masses, the whole world. Without signs we have sown, without any signs supporting it. Even the sword was an experiment. The world became the guinea pig of a big pharma. We are just now realizing the consequences of what it can do upon the people. Many people have suffered. So I ask again, whose corporate conviction is it? Is it the conviction again of the very people who in the near future will make legislation and force it upon the people? Because that's what you're saying. There's no international law that goes against receiving the sword. Guess what? In the future, there will be laws going against worshiping on the right through Sabbath, and laws telling people to worship on the wrong day of worship. Will we just bow down to the authority by then? It really sickens me to think about all these things. Now, again, Adventist, this is a religious matter issue. This has something to do with my religion and my body temple. Isn't that sufficient? And we as Adventists talk about temperance. What does temperance say? The law of temperance. Moderately taking what is good and abstain from that which is evil. Thoroughly abstain from it. Now, when the truth was insufficient, when the viewpoint did not have weight on it, guess what they did? We'll go to the article that Ted Wilson was talking about. You guess what? This article we showed you from previous video when it actually came out. When it actually came out in 2020, that article was very erroneous. We saw you how that article was mixed with lie, because they could not substantiate and prove from the spirit of prophecy that what they were saying was true. They tried to use Ellen White to say that she actually took it as well. As you can see on the screen, they said Ellen White was not only an inspired conduit of the health information much ahead of her time, but she modeled practical prevention in the face of the lethal disease in her era, the smallpox, and took the immunization herself. A blunt lie right to the face of all Adventists. Prove your point before you say it. Where did you get these statistics from? I'm going to show you where they got it from. They actually said, it will be interesting to know, however, that at the time when there was an epidemic of smallpox in the vicinity, she herself was jabbed, took the sword, and urged her helpers, those connected with her, to be jabbed as well, to take the sword as well. In taking these steps, Sister White recognized the fact that it has been proven that jab either renders one immune from smallpox or greatly lighten the effect if one does calm down with it. She also recognized the danger of her exposing others if they fail to take these precautions. All these things, where did it come from? Because we do not find any article from Spirit of Prophecy that actually says this. You know who said that? Who actually came up with that statement? It's from a person called D. Robinson. We'll come to that. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is not opposed. That is why they came to the conclusion that the Seventh-day Adventist Church is not opposed to public safety and government health mandates. Submission to the government authority is a biblical principle unless it conflicts with obedience to God. And I ask you, does God require obedience to keeping his body temple holy? Is that part of obedience? Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come. Whatsoever you eat or drink or whatsoever you do it all for the glory of God. And that also includes getting a shot or not. Everyone had to know what decisions they are making. Let's come back again. They are using what Bible text here? Romans chapter 13 verse 1 to 7, where they say the church, the government is established by God on earth. Red writing, it says, when it comes to the pestilence 19 shot, we believe that individuals have the right to state and defend their conviction either to receive the shot or not. Guess what? Individuals did not have the right to actually do that during the time, because the church actually said receiving it or not is not a religious matter issue. I'm going to let this lady talk.
Thank you for letting me speak again. I just wanted to say that the state seems to think that there are objections of a religious nature with respect to the COVID-19 vaccines. Also, saying in the negative that something is not religious is still making a religious statement. And here in Canada, although we have protection with respect to individual religious objections, there is a shift to require collective aspect, which is impossible to meet because of the way the statements are worded. And we would have freedom if there had been no statement. That would have allowed freedom of conscience, freedom of religion.
Amen, sister. If there were no statement at all, that would have allowed freedom of speech, religious liberty. But when the General Conference actually said, it's not a religious liberty matter, that in itself is a statement. It's an armor that the government used to say, what church do you represent? Adventist Church? Well, your leader said that that's not a religious liberty matter. So we can go on with our laws and you can get along with our regulations, our mandates. So you see how erroneous this, how they are speaking from both sides of their mouth. One, is it a religious liberty matter? Yes or no? If it is, then we should actually support it. If it is not, me personally, I cannot get the fact that I cannot agree with the fact that it is not a religious liberty issue, because it has everything to do with our religion. It has everything to do with our body temple. Now, so let's continue going to the article. It concludes, it actually gives in the red writing above it, they actually quoted Romans chapter 13, verse 1 to 7 to state that we should respect the government. Yes, it's true, but you have to know what involves religious worship towards God. The next time that they're going to quote this, you know when? When they will quote Romans chapter 13, verse 1 to 7. It is when the Sunday Law, Spirit of Prophecy Testimonies, Volume 5, page 717, actually state that those who actually implement or enforce the Sunday Law, they're going to say that, and there are some who will even add such a cause from the Scripture. Let every soul be subjected under a higher power, the powers that be ordained of God. Should you obey the government? Yes, we should obey the government. Again, we are not anti-government mandate. We support the government. We believe that the government is ordained of God. But when it comes to religious matter, religion is something that individuals should choose. Now, let's continue again. Let's go to the quotation that they actually used to say that Ellen White was actually someone who received the vaccination. Look at the screen. That statement that said that Ellen White actually received the shot was actually from D.E. Robinson. It was published in June 12, 1935. Where did he get this information? Did he actually provide some facts, some statements, some evidence of what the statement that he was actually using to show that Sister White actually received the shot? Not at all. But we can see that he was actually lying. We will prove it. Earlier, when Ellen White was still alive, D. Robinson actually said that she never said anything in this regard, not that she actually supported it by getting it. That is when Ellen White was alive. This is an article from February 10, 1915, written by the same person when Ellen White was still alive. It was asked if they should, Ellen White supported it. And what did he say? I mentioned the letter to her one day, but was unable to get anything definite. Sister White was writing. Did he get anything definite? By the way, remember, 1915 is the year that Ellen White died. After this, she did not say anything again. Did she get that shot just before she died? I don't think so. Around that time? No. This is the time when he's supposed to present something that Ellen White presented clearly without a shadow of a doubt that she actually supported it and received it when she was still alive, but nothing here. And then guess what? He actually went against the shot, the jab, when he was with Ellen White. See the writing there. When I was a young man, when I was a young man, I received the jab and had quite a serious time. This led me to feel that receiving a jab was wrong. This is D. Robinson again. This is not Ellen White. This is he saying it for himself. We entered the underlined part at the bottom. We certainly should not trust to any of these remedies which may be good in themselves, to the exclusion of such simple treatment as outlined in the instruction given us as a people. What was he referring to? He was referring to our medical missionary method. Now, what are we depending entirely upon? Drugs and the shots. In the past, you know what? During the smallpox outbreak and even during the influenza outbreak in the past, they were looking for Adventists to do hydrotherapy, do treatment on them, because we had a message, we had a system of treating people. And you know what? In the spirit of prophecy, we are told there are many ways of practicing the healing heart, but there is only one way that heaven approves. It is the simple remedy. That's the same word that he's using here. The simple treatment which God has given us, outlined by the spirit of prophecy. The 8 laws of health, which one of them is temperance, which tells us not to receive harmful stuff into our body. Now it's being rejected. So again, here is the place that he would have said, presented the evidence and tell us when Ellen White was alive that she actually received the shot. But did he present anything like that? No. Where did he get those later information from? I do not know. This is another letter from 1924 when Sister White was dead. Ellen White's son was asked the question. This is Willie White. Brother John Kellogg wrote him a letter if she actually supported it. Look at the top. It said she regarded it as a perplexing question. I do not remember of ever saying or writing that she had a special instruction regarding the shot. Now look at the part below, the underlined part. She said that as a child I received the shot. I was perfectly healthy until I received the shot, and by that my health was much impaired. Who is this here? This is Willie White. He said this after Ellen White died. He got it. Now maybe there's an history that the Ellen White's delegates received it, but Ellen White supporting it and receiving it, there's no evidence at all. There's no spirit of prophecy writing, but there's something that I know about. The only thing that she tells us to do is to reason from cause to effect and to weigh out the evidences and see what does science support. Again, we are pro-science. We are not anti-science. We are pro-science. Show us the research. Show us. This is what we're all about. We are not saying just go against the government. Just go against everything that they are saying. No. If receiving the sword is good, I want to receive it. Show me the evidence. If it is something that I needed, show me the evidence. From what I know at the moment, it's not good for my body. And you know what? This is what spirit of prophecy. Let's see what spirit of prophecy has to say about drug medication. Spirit of Prophecy, volume 4, page 139, paragraph 2, she said, mercury, calomel, and quinine have brought the amount of righteousness which the day of God alone will fully reveal. Preparation of mercury and calomel taken into the system ever retain their poisonous strength as long as there is a particle of it left in the system. These poisonous preparations have destroyed their millions and left sufferers upon the earth to linger out a miserable existence. Guess what? These same things, these same minerals that are mentioned here are also present in the current jab shot that we are receiving. Do you think she will be condemning it if she knew it? I would think so. You know what? Our Adventist pioneers were never neutral. They knew where to stand. They stood up for our truth. They fought for our truth. They defended religious liberty. Even during war, they didn't say just run off to war because the government implements it. During the Civil War, our pioneers actually wrote a letter, gave it to the government, and said that we want our soldiers to actually be medical work as medical people. We do not want them to bear arms. That is what they submitted to the church. Those soldiers who actually received arms and went killing, this is during the time of Ellen White and the pioneers I'm talking about during the Civil War in the United States. They actually censored those people who bear arms. Now look on the screen. This is how our pioneer defended, and look at the point that I did not say, which I'm going to conclude this segment here. In the Church Times, commenting on the failure of the proposal in Parliament to make the jab universally compulsory, says this is what they said in the past. If there is anything in the jab statistics, or if it is believed to be a safeguard against the disease of smallpox, it is absurd to allow the conscientious objector to roam at large. He is a greater danger. He is a greater danger to the community as a mad dog. So they're calling the conscientious objector as a mad dog. Now, look at the point which he's going to emphasize here. Without expressing any opinion as to the value of the shot, it seemed evident that such language as this bred the very spirit of the Roman Catholic Inquisition. If it is considered absurd to allow the conscientious objector to the opinion of the majority to the subject, if it is considered absurd to allow the conscientious objector to the opinion of the majority to this subject to roam at large, the next step would be to cage the conscientious dissenter from the established church. And the question arises here. Now listen to this, pay attention. If the shot or the jab be indeed a safeguard against the smallpox, how can the conscientious objector be a danger as a mad dog? What harm could he do in a community of people who receive the shot? What harm? Tell me. If that person believes that for his safety the shot is good, well, by all means, go and get it. Why do you have to force it upon another person who believes that is bad for him? Do you see that point here? Again, coming back to our religious idea that we're talking about. Now, point number 2, very crucial. It is one thing to declare it as a state of emergency. We can do that. But it is another thing to suggest the regulation. Are you telling me that the shot is the only absolute solution to the problem? Is that what you're telling me? Are there not any other way? Friends, I can show you from research that they actually said that vegetarians were 73% unlikely to receive the pestilence. Then we should have mandated that. We should have looked for true things that really work. But guess what? They were pushing something that did not work and something with a greater side effect. And that you want to force it upon the masses is one thing to declare it as a state of emergency and a corporate problem of the community, but it is another thing to coming up with a solution. And what we're questioning, it's the solution. It's not the fact that it is a problem that we face socially. Get that point? So how do we as Adventists solve the problem? Now, I've been saying this even during the pandemic. Even during the pandemic, was I a medical professional? I wasn't. Where did I get my knowledge? Spirit of Prophecy, Counsels on Diet, page 285, paragraph 2 says, in dealing with the patient in our sanitarium, we must reason from cause to effect. From cause to effect. Even parents who teach their kids to reason from cause to effect. Counsels on Education, Christian Education, page 173, cause to effect. Adventists should know how to deal with the cause of it. Cause to effect. If you have a respiratory problem, deal with it in the way we deal with respiratory disease. If it is a cardiovascular problem, deal with it as you would deal with a cardiovascular problem. Now, why is this very important for Adventists? This is a very important quotation that I want you to take note. Volume 10 of manuscript release, page 314, paragraph 1 says, the word of God in his law is binding upon every intelligent mind. The truth for this time, the third angel's message, that is the Sabbath message, is to be proclaimed with a loud voice, meaning with increasing power as we approach the great final test. We are going to that time now. This thirst must come to the church in connection with the true medical missionary work. Friends, what is Spirit of Prophecy saying here? It's saying that the Sabbath thirst will come in connection with the true medical missionary work. Pause. Let me explain something. If this is true, then there will be a lot of sick people in the last day. And to finish the work, we will have to combine it with medical missionary work. Those who do not understand medical ministry, missionary work, and the religious freedom as it deals with your health, you got to be careful which side you want to be standing on, because you may be swept away by the crowd to just receiving what they enforce it upon the masses. Greater things are yet to come. We're going to show you right now. But it's saying that that work must go together. Now, pause and think about it for a moment. They're not just going to come and make mandates and say, remember the Sunday law that we always talked about? It is here. They're not going to force it like that. The devil is not stupid. He's cunning. He will create problem. And the Sabbath, the Sunday law, papal Sabbath, will be a solution. Will be a solution to existing problem. It will be something. It will say, this is our problem. Moral problem. Let's fix moral problem. Let's fix climate, environment. So this is how they will create an atmosphere where they declare a state of emergency. And we've shown this a lot of times from climate change videos. They are going to declare a state of emergency, climate emergency in the near future. And when they say, go to worship on Sunday, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, friends? Do not worship on Sabbath. Finally, when they say that, do not worship on Sabbath. We are going to be named destroyer of the peace, troublers of the people. Friends, we got to know how to treat religion. We got to know how to defend our religious liberty. We're going to be entering into times that when we want to stand for the truth, we will be placed in unfavorable positions, says Spirit of Prophecy. Now, they say the best is yet to come. I'm going to tell you, the worst is yet to come. Friends, if you are blessed by it and want to see the whole video, click here. If you want to see another video similar to that, click here. And do not forget to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay updated. God bless you all.